Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to chat with you guys a little bit about one of my favorite combinations in order to build a raw bench press. And actually, funny enough, this is a combination a lot of equipped lifters like to use as well, and that is combining the floor press with JM presses. And you'll notice a lot of my stronger clients do this. Obviously, I've got a couple clients doing it here who I do vlogs for regularly. And I definitely have other clients do this who you guys don't see in the vlogs. And, I feel like this combination even helped me quite a bit when I got to my best bench a while back that I've hit on camera. Before I trimmed down and got lighter, I'd gotten sick with the mold situation and then rebuilding back up. Of combining, again, a floor press with a JM press, meaning they're done in the same workouts. And I like the floor press both for max effort work as well as repetition effort work. Whereas in obviously the JM press, we tend to do high reps. And yeah, I know there are some coaches out there who do use some lower reps and you occasionally see them do it, but it's probably not something you want to do on a regular basis. And the thing to keep in mind with the JM press is you do want healthy elbows. I almost never have a lifter work this lift in without first spending some time building up their elbows. In other words, we'll do a lot of band work for the elbow tendons. So those lower insertions to the medial and lateral head of the tricep, you really want to thicken those tendons up. So the reason this combination seems to work so well is because it helps with a lockout strength because of the triceps, but also because it teaches you to really get strong even out of the bottom of a raw bench, particularly if you're thicker. And I'm talking about this for slightly more advanced lifters who get fairly close to their chest. In other words, they've built up enough back thickness that the floor press is actually a fairly long range of motion exercise. In other words, when people think about it like, oh, well, bigger chest matters. No, it's your back. It's your back that helps you get the bar close to your chest. And it's because if you've built your back up when you're on the floor, your shoulders can go into a slightly deeper angle before your triceps or elbows touch the floor. Okay, so that matters a lot, right? It matters a lot because it's also something harder to lay on rather than, a lot of times people are like, well, couldn't we just lay on something? Well, you could, but it tends to be a lot more stable when it's your back. But with the floor press, people who are, who are much thinner like it for lockout strength, but you're thicker lifters, it tends to help you get explosive close to the chest. And here's why. It forces you to remove your leg drive. Right, not only do you lose your leg drive, but also those of us who can use our lats to fire out of the bottom of the bench, you can't do that so much anymore because it removes your ability to do that because you can't really compress your triceps against your lats the same way. You can't do it the same way. And so accordingly, it removes that out of the bottom. It removes your leg drive completely. And if we remove the leg drive completely from the movement, you're forced to use your chest to get the weight started. It's that dead stop, right? And that tends to build a lot of power down near the bottom, the first few inches off of the chest, because you're teaching yourself to have to use your chest to drive, which is kind of funny because oftentimes I will get people who ask me, well, how do you learn to leg drive? And the funny thing is you don't necessarily have to learn how to use leg drive. If you learn to get really tight and get your arch in really tight, you kind of tend to leg drive by default. It's something that just almost happens on its own once you learn how to arch correctly. And once you get your legs super tight and you learn to dig them into the floor, a little bit of leg drive tends to be automatic. And then it becomes something that you can't turn off. And in order to remove leg drive, you have to take the bench press away. And that's one reason a lot of people like the Larson press. I'm not a fan of the Larson press for reasons I've covered in the past. I don't think it has any benefits over the floor press, other than maybe for lifters who have a very, very small back because of the extra range of motion. But I think it carries a degree of risk. I think it's a much higher risk of tearing or injuring a pec personally. Just my personal opinion. Just take it for what it's worth. I'm not a fan. I think the floor press does what we need it to do just fine without using the Larson press. And again, my personal opinion, no more, no less. I don't care that you say, well, this coach loves the Larson press and says you're wrong. Well, I don't care. It's just about opinion on accessory movements. I mean, if we're at that point of pettiness, then Jesus Christ, we need to focus on getting strong again and lose the stupidity. You know, if we're really going to argue about something like that. I mean, again, you're probably going to be a weak motherfucker if you stand around arguing about stuff like that instead of just getting stronger. Really, guys. So I don't care. I don't care. I don't like it. I think it's high risk. Outside of that, I don't think it's a bad exercise at all. So back over to the point. Floor press. Again, we have to drive from that dead stop. And I feel that because of that, it actually is quite a good pectoral exercise. It's one of the few really good pectoral exercises that doesn't stretch the pecs, that we're not into a fully lengthened position, which normally we would want. But in that case, it's much, much easier on your shoulders. And I love using the floor press in phases where someone's tendons have started to hurt. Their tendons are a little inflamed. They're having any shoulder pain. I love to put the floor press in those situations because it works so well there. All right. So now that we've got that out of the way and we understand what the floor press does, then we have the JM press. Now, a lot of times people will look at the JM press and they'll say, okay, so that'll help with the lockout because it helps the triceps. Well, yes, you know, any tricep strength will help with your lockout. Again, the floor press tends to help some people with their lockout as well. But that's not what we're looking at completely. It's the fact that it puts the triceps into a very extreme lengthened position with a heavy weight. It's one of the few exercises where we can load a lot of mechanical tension on the triceps in a lengthened position, while at the same time being far easier to recover from because of the shoulder angles involved and still the weight being used in a closed grip bench. Okay, so we get just as much tricep development as a closed grip bench, possibly more due to that lengthened position. Okay, and we'll get to that with the muscle fibers in a minute, while not beating us up quite as much, at least in the shoulder area. Now it can be very hard on your elbows. So again, learning when to rotate exercises, how to use the JM press, there are variations of it you can do in those situations. But I think that's a big part of where it shines too, is because that lengthened position is also where we are at the bottom of a bench. It will help your triceps fire harder out of the bottom of the bench press. So we come back over to talking about a raw bench. We're usually, not always, but usually we're weaker out of the bottom, particularly if our grip is wider. If our grip is closer, it tends to be the lockout. But if we're gripping fairly wide, you know, anything where we're on the rings, you know, pinkies on rings or wider, the JM press will actually help the triceps because we tend to be weak out of the bottom. And it will help them because that's where the most tension is placed on them. Those muscle fibers are going to tend to get worked very effectively, and it'll help us drive out of the bottom with our triceps more. So I really like this combination. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I'll talk to you guys next time.